we begin, could I just get you to make sure that your phones, if you have them on you, turn them off or onto silent, just for the duration of the service. Thank you. To begin our service today, I'd like to introduce Daniel Todd, who's going to sing the prayer.
Excuse me, gentlemen. I need to read the live stream, sorry.
Help us to be wise in times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, give us faith so we'll be saved. La luce che tu dai nel cuore resterà a ricordarci che l'eterna stella sei nella mia preghiera. Quanta fede c'è. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, give us faith so we'll be saved. Sogniamo un mondo senza più violenza, un mondo di giustizia e di speranza. Ognuno dia mano e suo vicino, simbolo di pace, di fraternità, la forza che ci dai. We ask that life be kind and watch us from above. We hope each soul will find another soul to love. Let this be our prayer. Let this be our prayer. Just like every child needs to find a place, guide us with your grace, give us faith so we'll be saved. E la fede hai accesso ai tuoi, sento che ci salverò.
Thank you, Daniel. Family and friends, we are gathered here today to give thanks and to celebrate the life of Brian Neale and return his body to the earth. On behalf of Kathleen and the family, I'd like to welcome you all and extend to you sincere appreciation for your so many of you take the time to come and pay respects. It is an indication of the high regard that Brian was held in by those who knew him. When dealing with the reality of death, to have the love and friendship of those who care. It's comforting and heartwarming. It links families to the grief. In some ways, it helps a little to ease the hurt and loss. My name is Katrina Corman, and it will be an honour to lead you through this service today. For this one farmer, the worries are over. Lie down and rest your head. Your time has been and struggles enough with the tractor in the shed. Some years were not easy, some downright hard, but your faith always transcended. Put away your tools and sleep in peace. The fences have all been mended. Raise the one hand, work the land well, and always follow the sun. Hang up the shovel inside the shed. Your work here on earth is done. The strength you possess led your journey through life over the dry and stony way. The sun is setting, the stock are all safe. Here now is the end of your day. Your love of the land passed on to your kin. The stories flow like wine. Wash off your boots in the puddles left by the rain, one final time. You always believed that the land would provide, and it always did somehow. Take off your gloves and put them down. No more sweat or worry for you now. Your labour is done. You're home now in heaven. No more must you wait. Your legacy lives on, your love of the land, and we will close the gate. My apologies to the author, Nancy Kreinhoff, for this slightly edited and adapted version of her wonderful poem. Brian was a tall, good-looking man whose presence filled his space with strength and vitality. He seemed never to have aged, but last January his health suffered a setback which put him on a path from which, despite all efforts and a lengthy time in hospital, there would be no return. Sadly, Brian passed away on the 5th of November. Some days have gone by now, and there's been time to reflect on the man that Brian was. A husband to Kathleen, to Shaman, to David, grandfather to Lee, great-grandfather of Floyd. He was a farmer, but at various times he worked at the sale yards and as a shearing contractor, and over the years willingly gave a hand to whoever and whenever he was called upon. Down to earth and practical, inventive and idiosyncratic, he was a man who just got the job done, always in a way that was unique to him, and never leaving a thing unfinished. He couldn't abide loose ends. He was methodical and precise in all he did, so much so that his vehicle was serviced regularly, exactly on the day specified on the sticker, right there and then, not a day before or a minute after. This was someone who was a creature of habit, who religiously tuned into the market reports and followed the trends with great interest. He set goals for himself and worked hard to achieve them. And when he reached one goal, he'd move on to the next. He was always his children were caring, who raised him to be as good and determined as he was. He certainly never mollycoddled. He was of the generation that believed in tough love. He taught them many things, but instead of giving instructions, he was more the watch me. So you had to pay attention. He rarely had to pay attention. Something else that he never actually put into words probably is that he loved and cared deeply for his children. It was implied and yet clearly evident. An example that illustrates this is one Christmas when David was ill and confined to his bedroom, isolated from the festivities. Brian thoughtfully brought Father Christmas to visit him in his room. It's in these ways that he expressed his love to them, in deeds rather than words. Brian's family are the ones who know him best, and they each have a myriad of stories and memories of their dad, and we'll hear some of their tributes shortly. But first we'll hear from Kathy. Are you ready?
born in the Millicent Hospital on the 8th of February 1943. He was the oldest of 4 siblings, June, Trevor and Dawn. His family lived in Manfred, Tree Lumber. They eventually moved to Millicent and bought a few acres and milked a few cows. Brian worked as a shearing contractor for a few years so he could put some money into the farm. He also worked at the cattle and sheep market, which was held on Tuesdays and Thursdays in those days. They were married in what the ranch north. Our 3 children attended school in Panola. Our school started off as a 3-bedroom. Our house started off as a 3-bedroom cottage. It only had 32-volt power, which meant I could only wash and iron when the engine was going. We were self-sufficient as far as what we ate. We had a vegetable garden, meat and eggs and house cows. A memorable incident was driving home one night, buying a handful of beans. Brian worked all night to get rid of them before daylight. We used to spend some weekends on the tractor and trailer, picking up stumps after the ground had been cleared. Soon after came the 240-volt power. I felt like a queen with all the new electrical implements. After Ash Wednesday, Brian joined the gliding club and learned to fly glider. Then he started travelling to America until he found a gyro helicopter he liked. I was very proud of him. He was soon flying the gyro. God bless you, Brian.
Charmaine, would you like to comment now?
And come to terms with this whole year. I actually wish I could have sat with you and asked for more stories about your life from your perspective and recorded them, but I always thought you would live into your 90s because you were so fit and active. I'm blown away by what has happened. We're all in shock. I know this year you spent a lot of time in reflection with your mind replaying your life. I remember visiting you in Adelaide. At that time you were in the Royal Adelaide Hospital. You said to me, if I die tomorrow it's okay because I've done everything I wanted to do. I know you were not happy about what happened, of course, but you began to reinvent yourself, showing your resilience. What you were forced to face, endure and battle this year has left me with sadness, but also of awe and wonder as you strive to overcome what was probably the impossible, but you gave it your best shot. Working with and alongside the doctors and nurses, you tried to help yourself be the best you could be to regain your independence. Against all odds, as the condition was so severe. Your courage and determination reminds me of how you influenced me as a child growing up under your wing, such as, remember the time we were riding along on our horses, heading home after checking the paddocks, which you did by horseback mostly in those days, when suddenly Socks, who I was riding, bolted. I was always scared of bolting, it was one of my fears. I hung on until Socks turned and stopped suddenly in front of the fence. I went flying, probably over his head, I can't remember, but I hit the ground falling off. Luckily those days we bounced well, so I stood up and started walking Socks home. I was not getting back on, I was too scared. To which I heard you cantering up behind me on your horse. You somehow picked me up and plonked me back on mine, telling me I was riding home. To this day, I thank you for bringing me up this way, so that I too will always pick myself back up after falling in life, as I saw you try so hard to do this year. On the day I said goodbye to you forever, you told me that you will be okay. I will be okay, you said. I will be with you in spirit.
Janice, would you like to come forward?
Firstly, I just want to thank everybody here today to celebrate the life of my dad. And another huge thank you to my mum, my sister Charmaine, and my brother Dave for being so supportive and keeping it all together during the last 10 months. I love you all. And thank you to you, Dad, for giving me an amazing start to life. We literally had the best playground you could ever imagine. So many memories and stories to tell about our adventures, some good, some not so good. Our backyard was 1,100 acres. It was the platform for soon-to-be lessons learned for both my brother, sister and I, with our dad on the farm. So there seemed to be, on many occasions, communication barriers between my dad and I. My communication with him was sometimes a rare occurrence. I began to think he was of the belief that the more you say, the less people remember. But the times he did speak to me, full of instructions, as relieved as I was, I couldn't hear him properly because he was already walking away from me in the other direction. So I would hear the odd word, usually a noun, like sheep, windmill, and horse, which he must have emphasised in a louder voice, and I'm thinking, geez, a doing word wouldn't go astray. So as a 10-year-old, it was like trying to work out some crossword puzzle and piece it all together, like, what do I do with the sheep on the horse, and how does the windmill fit into the equation? And on the occasion I did hear instruction from my dad, for example, driving the truck feeding hay to the cows, I would hear the words, turn right. In the excitement of hearing these instructions, I of course would turn left. And well, I heard him loud and clear after that. In more recent years, I especially enjoyed our get-togethers, in particular the time that Mum and Dad visited us in Queensland, and our long discussions about shares and what to buy and what not to buy, and his keen interest in my partner Jace's racehorses. All in all, I wouldn't change my life with my dad for the world, and to me, he was simply amazing. In my eyes, there was nothing he couldn't do. Dad, you were so brave and clever and lived your life to the full. I have a letter here from my granddaughter Jamie, my daughter, Brian's granddaughter. To Papa, we had so many wonderful memories. When Declan and myself lived in Millicent and Roe, we were very lucky to have spent time with you and Nana. The time you gave him a ride on the farm bike, and he also enjoyed picking mulberries and raking up the apples beneath the apple trees. We enjoyed coming to visit on Friday nights, and we would have sausage rolls, pies, chocolate biscuits and coffee and wine. You did so many wonderful things in your life, and we admire all of them. Flying the plane, travelling to America and enjoying things that you love. We also like your interest in watching movies. Thank you for the memories, the last 30 years, and on the old farm. Declan was so lucky to have had a great-grandfather. Jake never got to meet you, but we enjoyed sending photos to you and Nan. Until we meet again, love Jamie, Declan and Jake, our grandfather and great-grandfather. Memories keep in our hearts.
David.
This year has been tough for us as a family, and with Dad and his mysterious condition, and also their mum also suffering a stroke. With all this going on, what I noticed was the generosity and support of our community. Everyone was there to help us. I guess this is why love means so much. I also witnessed the love between my mum and Dad, and I wanted to share an example of this. When Mum was flown to Adelaide with the flying doctors, and of course Dad was already up there at the Hampstead Rehabilitation Centre, I was with Mum at Flinders getting her settled in. Meanwhile, Dad had decided he wanted to come and visit. Keeping in mind that at this point he couldn't walk or hardly see, but somehow he managed to arrange an access taxi and was determined to get to Flinders Hospital. At this point, staff at Hampstead had worked out what he was up to. So I got a call from one of his doctors saying that they can't let him go on his own because apart from everything else, he had also been having trouble breathing and there was no staff available to travel with him. So I travelled across town so I could travel back to Flinders Hospital with him in the taxi. Once arriving at Flinders, he said he can push himself in the wheelchair and I might just need to guide him a little bit. Well, you can imagine how busy it is at the hospital with me walking behind him, instructing him to go right a bit, left a bit, watch out for that person, etc. It was chaotic. Anyway, he made it to Mum that day. Dad was a practical man with a quirky sense of humour, and I wanted to share something he told me in his final weeks at Millicent Hospital. I went to visit him one evening and he said, "A clock fell on my head today." And I looked over at the wall where the clock was normally hanging, and sure enough, the clock was on the ground, obviously broken. I inquired what had happened. He said that they had brought him back from having a shower and he was sitting over there trying to get his shirt on when a gust of wind blew through the door and blew the clock off the wall and onto his head. He then said, they said I had some sort of stroke in my spine, and then these damn infections from bed sores, and then they reckon I had another stroke in my eyes. But what might have finished me off was a falling clock. I guess that means my time here must be up. There's one last thing I'd like to share, and any farmers here might appreciate it. When we were growing up, and in fact all through our life, whenever the market report came on the radio, we all had to be silent and listen. I would now like to read to Dad his final market report. Numbers rose as agents yarded 1,224 head of live weight cattle and open auction cattle. These sold to a large field of trade and processor buyers, along with feeder and restocker orders. Quality was generally good, with weight and condition in most pens, with the majority of the market selling to dearer rates this week. Dealer steers to the weight from 574 cents, with similar heifers making from 503 to 550 cents a kilogram. Feeder orders were active here from 505 to 590 cents on steers, and on heifers from 522 to 574 cents a kilogram. There was some restock activity to 554 cents on steers and to 502 cents a kilogram on heifers. Yearling steers to the trade made from 451 cents to 514 cents, with heifers making from 4 feeders operated here from 43 cents to 533 cents on steers and 434 to 506 cents on heifers. Grown steers and bullets continue to have some large weights in the trade active. Feeding activity from 442 cents to 503 cents. Grain heifers to the trade range from 388 to 408 cents, with feeders active from 406 to 495 cents, with manufacturing steers made from 280 cents to 365 cents a kilogram. Heavy cows returned from 350 to 370 cents, reaching a high of 382 cents, while the lighter types made from 322 to 335 cents a kilogram. Feeder price for active to 330 cents a kilogram. Bulls made from 280 to 320 cents a kilogram. This has been laid down on the National Livestock Reporting Service. Thank you.
So many memories, so many life lessons learned. So many reasons to be proud to have shared the time with this remarkable man. So many reasons to be thankful. I'm just going to have a little pause in our service for now, just for a moment. You might like to bring to mind the man you knew. You might like to remember something that you did or said, how we touched your life perhaps. Perhaps you just like to be in the moment. Or just have a few moments of quiet reflection. There is a season, a time for every purpose on earth, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to reap what was planted. As a man of the land, Brian understood this reality as he lived and breathed it every day, the rhythms and dictates of nature. We all have our time on this earth. We live, we learn, we laugh and we love. And then one day it's time to leave and say goodbye. This is the cycle of life of which we're all a part, bound by nature to exist for a time and then to die. Long or short, each and every life is significant, and we all deserve to be acknowledged, honoured and farewelled. Those that were close to Brian will shed tears and feel the pain of loss that it brings. There will be sadness and grief. Death brings a life to an end, but death is not the end of love. Love lives on. It lives on in those left behind, in their hearts, and in the precious memories they now hold dear. In the lessons learnt from him, and in the strength and can-do attitude they gained from him. And in every single deed done for his family, his friends and his community, his heritage continues, handed down through his children and the next generations. This is the legacy he leaves for you, and it's his greatest gift. Brian, your time on earth was well spent, and we thank you for being the man you were, and all that you did. We say thank you for the good times and for your help through the not so good times, for your hard work and the lessons that made us who we are today, and for showing what courage and determination looks like. There's a big empty space where you once were, and you will be sadly missed. Brian, go onward from this world, carried gently by the spirit that made you. We stand here with hearts torn open in love and loss as we let you now go, carried into a deeper understanding. Just as the dark earth opened now beneath the sky, will soon close its arms safely around you, and you will become part of a greater embrace. Everything aching and hurt will be comforted and soothed. Everything in chaos will find beauty and rest, and all shall be healed. As we say goodbye to you and let you go, we set you free to soar into the skies and win your way through the clouds. Your memory will forever be in the safekeeping of your loved ones. Rest in peace, Brian. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our service for Brian John Neale. I thank you again for your attendance. It is really very much appreciated. You're all invited and indeed very welcome to go along to the gliding pub, share some light refreshments and perhaps catch up with the Neale family. Kathy and the rest of the family will now come forward and say their own goodbyes to Brian. Please give them a little time to do so and then follow on if you so wish. Go in peace. Thank you.
And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full, I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do, and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you do, when I bit off much more than I could chew. Until there was doubt, I had it up and I spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall, and did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed and cried, I've had my fill, my share of losing, and now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way. Oh no, not me. I did it my way. For what is a man? heart to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my I did it my way.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet